Last time, we talked about why introverts carry a kind of power most people never learn to see. But dozens of you sent me the same follow-up, and honestly, I wasn't ready for it. Marcus had been sitting at that table for 2 hours. He hadn't raised his voice once. He hadn't interrupted anyone. While the other side laid out their demands, he just watched. He took 3 notes on a small pad. He asked one question calm, specific, almost boring sounding. Then he leaned back and went completely still. The room waited. His counterparts started talking to fill the silence, and in doing so, handed Marcus everything he needed to walk away with the better deal. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody ever does. What no one at that table understood was Marcus had already won before he opened his mouth. That story probably sounds familiar. Not because you've seen it in a boardroom, but because that's you. That's always been you. And yet the world has had a very specific word for how you operate. There's a label people use for someone who doesn't dominate a room. You've heard it your whole life. Too withdrawn, too calculating, doesn't assert himself enough. And that label has followed you into job interviews, salary talks, business deals places where being loud gets mistaken for being strong. But here's what cognitive psychology has quietly been documenting for years. Every single trait that gets you labeled as too reserved is actually a marker of a completely different kind of intelligence. A rarer kind. Today we're breaking down 6 of those traits specifically. Stay with me through number 4, because that one will make you rethink every negotiation you've ever walked away from feeling like you lost. Number 1, weaponize stillness. Most people assume that whoever speaks first controls the room. That belief costs them every time. You are not struggling to find words. You are letting the other person reveal exactly how desperate they are. What the world reads as hesitation, researchers call strategic restraint the deliberate withholding of response to force the other party into overexposing their position. Every second of quiet you hold is a second the other side spends second-guessing themselves. The prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain that governs planning, impulse control, and long-range decision-making, runs measurably hotter in people who process this way. A 2020 study conducted at Yale University found that negotiators who delayed their initial response by even 8 seconds were perceived as more competent and extracted 18% more value from the final agreement. Most people across from you never realize what just happened. Number 2, the unreadable advantage. When your face gives nothing away, the other side loses their map. They came in ready to read your reactions and adjust their pitch accordingly. When there's nothing to read, their entire strategy starts to crack. You are not cold. You are in control of every signal you send. The amygdala, your brain's system for processing threat and emotional intensity, functions differently in introverted minds. It doesn't react less, it filters more deliberately. What reaches your face is chosen, not automatic. A 2022 study from the Max Planck Institute found that individuals with lower baseline emotional expressiveness in high-stakes conversations were rated as 34% more trustworthy and considerably harder to manipulate by their negotiating counterparts. And that misreading has cost you more than you realize. Number 3, the preparation nobody sees. While everyone else is walking in confident on instinct, you've already run this conversation 30 times in your head. You know they're most likely opening. You've thought through their fallback. You've already decided where your line is and exactly how you'll hold it. What gets called obsessive thinking in casual conversation is called scenario architecture. In negotiation research, the structured mental rehearsal of probable outcomes before any real exchange begins. The default mode network, your brain's internal simulation engine, responsible for imagining the future and modeling other people's behavior, is significantly more engaged in introverted thinkers during downtime. A 2018 study from MIT's Sloan School of Management found that negotiators who engaged in structured pre-negotiation mental rehearsal outperformed their counterparts in 71% of recorded sessions. If this is you, there's a reason for it. Before we get to the next few, I want to stop here for a second. Because what's coming in points 4 and 5 is where this gets genuinely uncomfortable. These aren't just advantages. They suggest that the negotiating world has been built on a myth and quiet people have been quietly dismantling it the whole time. How many of these have landed so far? Just drop a number in the comments. Literally, just a number. I read every single one. All right, let's keep going. Because what comes next gets more specific and more uncomfortable. Number 4, the surgical question. Loud negotiators make statements. They argue. They push. They perform certainty, even when they have none. You do something far more effective. You ask one question that pulls the entire foundation out from under their position. Not an aggressive question, a precise one. And then you say nothing. This is the one most people in your life have completely misunderstood about you. They think careful questioning means you're unsure. It means you're already 3 moves ahead. The anterior cingulate cortex, your brain's built-in inconsistency detector, fires rapidly in people who listen more than they speak. It flags gaps in logic, contradictions in tone, and moments where someone's words don't match their posture. A 2019 study from Johns Hopkins University found that negotiators who used targeted diagnostic questions rather than declarative arguments reached favorable outcomes in 64% more cases than their assertion-heavy counterparts. Sound familiar? Number 5. The gift of being underestimated. Here it is, the one nobody wants to claim. You have spent years being overlooked, talked over in meetings, dismissed before you finished your thought, and every single time you filed it away. You did not react. You did not perform outrage. You simply noted it and kept going. That is not a wound. That is a weapon. Abraham Lincoln understood this better than almost anyone. His rivals mocked his manner too slow, too thoughtful, too reluctant to throw punches. They handed him every advantage that comes with being underestimated. He used it to outmaneuver men who had far more political capital, more money, and far louder voices. He won because they never saw him as a threat until it was too late. Behavioral scientists call this structural position low expectation leverage, the measurable advantage that comes when your opponent stops guarding against you. A 2021 study from the University of Amsterdam found that negotiators who were initially underestimated by their counterparts secured outcomes 41% more favorable than baseline predictions suggested they would, and that misreading has been working in your favor longer than you know. Number 6, building the deal that actually holds. Here's the difference nobody talks about. Most negotiators are optimizing for the moment, the signed agreement, the handshake, the number on the page. Your instinct runs longer than that. You are thinking about whether this deal survives contact with reality, whether the other party will actually follow through, whether there's enough goodwill in the room to handle what comes after. That isn't softness. That is a more sophisticated read of what a deal actually is. The insula, the region of your brain governing empathy, physical self-awareness, and deep social intuition, shows measurably elevated activity in people with introverted processing styles. It picks up tension in the room before the tension has a name. It reads the hesitation in a voice before the speaker himself knows he's hesitating. A 2023 study published in Organizational Behavior and Human Decision Processes conducted at Columbia University found that agreements reached by introvert-leaning negotiators had a 37% lower rate of renegotiation or collapse within 18 months. You don't just close deals, you close deals that last. You are not too slow for this world. You are too precise for the way this world has always rushed itself. Your brain isn't missing something. It is doing something most people never develop the discipline to do. Here's what strikes me most, after looking at all of this research together. The entire mythology of negotiation, the alpha in the room, the loudest voice, the most aggressive ask, is not supported by the data. What the data actually shows is a profile that looks almost exactly like you, calm under pressure, deeply prepared, impossible to read, asking the right question at the right moment, playing a longer game than anyone else at the table even knows is being played. The shame you've carried about being too quiet begins to dissolve here. Not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because you now understand the game you've actually been playing and how well you've already been playing it. If you want to go further with this, specifically how introverts hold ground when the pressure in a room becomes personal, that's exactly what the next video covers. I think it's going to hit differently after this one. Now, if you've been listening to all of this and thinking, honestly, none of this sounds like me, I go quiet because I'm anxious, not because I'm strategic, that's a completely valid place to be. That just means there's a layer underneath this one worth looking at first. The earlier video on how introverts separate anxiety from instinct is probably the right starting point for you. If this kind of breakdown is useful to you, subscribing means you won't miss what's coming next.